Jessica Foster slid a $7 restaurant voucher across my desk like she was handing me the keys to a new luxury car. It had a purple marker handwritten message on it that read, "Appreciate the little things complete," with a poorly drawn smiley face. I am Edward Harper, 48 years old, and I stared at that piece of cheap plastic for exactly 4 seconds. That was long enough to remember sleeping in my office chair Tuesday night because we were coordinating a massive system upgrade across 3 different time zones. That was long enough to recall the 91-hour work weeks that closed our record-breaking $267 million third quarter. It was long enough to think about my aging body telling me this relentless pace was not sustainable anymore. Then I smiled. I smiled not because I was grateful, but because in that precise moment, Jessica had just handed me everything I needed to finally walk away from 15 years of my life. But let me back up and explain exactly how I got to this absurd point. Sitting in a corporate office holding a $7 coupon after delivering the biggest quarter in company history. For the past 15 years, I have been the Senior Operations Director at Summit Enterprises. On paper, we are an enterprise software solutions company. In reality, we sell complex systems to Fortune 500 companies that do not always understand what they are buying, but they know they absolutely need to stay competitive in a world where technology changes faster than most executives can keep up. I did not start out in operations at the director level. I began as a junior production coordinator right out of college, back when Summit had maybe 200 employees instead of the 2,000 we have today. This was nearly 2 decades ago when the company was still figuring out what it wanted to be and how it wanted to operate. I worked my grueling way up through planning logistics and advanced system design. By year 5, I was managing cross-functional teams across the country. By year 10, I was architecting the core operational frameworks that still run the entire company today. The thing about operations is that it is not glamorous work, but absolutely nothing moves without it. Sales teams can promise the moon and stars to clients. Engineering departments can build the most sophisticated software in the world. But operations determines whether customers actually get what they paid for when they need it at the quality they expect. It is the vital difference between a company that merely talks about excellence and one that actually delivers it every single day. My former director, Henry Wallace, understood this fundamental truth perfectly. Henry was old school. He was 58 when I started working under him, and he was a guy who had built operational systems for 3 different major corporations before landing at Summit. He fiercely protected our department when clueless executives wanted impossible timelines. He fought tooth and nail for proper staffing budgets when other departments complained about headcount. He made absolutely sure that operational expertise was respected and never taken for granted. Henry had a simple but profound philosophy. Operations is exactly like the foundation of a house. Nobody ever thinks about it until it cracks, and by then it is usually too expensive to fix. He made sure we never let it crack. Working under Henry, I learned how to build robust systems that could scale indefinitely. I learned how to anticipate complex problems before they became unmitigated disasters, and how to manage teams that kept everything running smoothly even when sales was promising delivery dates that made the engineering department break out in hives. The work was demanding, but it was always fair. We stayed late when it truly mattered. We handled massive emergencies that came in at 5:45 on Friday evenings. We dealt with client implementations that required delicate coordination across multiple global time zones and technical teams. But Henry always protected us when it counted the most. He pushed back hard against impossible deadlines. He bluntly told the C-suite when their financial projections were pure fantasy instead of reality. He made sure our annual bonuses and promotions accurately reflected our actual contributions and not just our job titles. Then Henry retired 18 months ago, and absolutely everything changed for the worse. Jessica Foster arrived with a shiny new MBA from a prestigious university, 3 years of theoretical consulting experience, and exactly zero understanding of how manufacturing-adjacent operations actually work in the real world. She was 31 years old, sharp as a blade, and absolutely convinced that efficiency metrics and data analytics could solve any operational challenge, no matter how nuanced. Her first team meeting was a master class in regurgitating business school buzzwords. She talked endlessly about optimization, streamlined processes, data-driven decision-making, and leveraging synergies for maximum throughput. She talked about bringing a fresh, dynamic perspective to operations and modernizing our legacy approach for the digital age. What she distinctly did not do was ask a single meaningful question about our current functioning systems, our deep client relationships, or why certain processes existed in the first place. She did not inquire about our team's vast experience, our institutional knowledge, or what we had learned from 15 years of handling every conceivable kind of operational crisis. After that initial meeting, she pulled me aside with a conspiratorial smile. "Edward, I have heard great things about your institutional knowledge," she said. "Henry spoke very highly of your technical expertise. I am counting on you to help drive this exciting transformation and bring our department into the 21st century." My internal translation of her corporate speak was immediate. "I am going to change everything that is currently working perfectly, and I need you to make sure it does not completely fall apart while I blindly figure out what I am doing." I honestly tried to give her the benefit of the doubt. Everyone deserves a learning curve, especially when they are taking over complex legacy systems they did not build. I patiently walked her through our intricate client onboarding protocols. I explained the crucial difference between standard implementations and custom integrations that required special, delicate handling. I showed her the early warning systems I had personally built to catch problems before they escalated into disasters. I detailed the relationships we had carefully cultivated with key clients and the informal networks that kept critical information flowing smoothly between notoriously siloed departments. She listened, politely took detailed notes on her tablet, and asked seemingly intelligent questions. For a few brief weeks, I actually thought maybe this could work. Maybe having fresh eyes on old systems would actually help us improve our margins. Then she started optimizing. The first glaring sign of trouble was the Monday morning metrics dashboard initiative. "We need real-time visibility into operational performance," she announced, during a mandatory team meeting. Just a quick snapshot of key performance indicators. Nothing too heavy, just actionable data that helps leadership make informed decisions. The massive problem with this was that our existing systems were intentionally designed for weekly and monthly reporting cycles, not daily granular metrics. Creating daily dashboards meant someone had to manually pull data from 6 different disconnected platforms, cross-reference it with current client schedules, validate the accuracy against multiple primary sources, and format everything into executive-friendly, colorful charts. That someone was me and my already overworked team. "Where exactly will the additional hours come from to do this?" I asked during the rollout meeting. "We will streamline existing processes," she said confidently. "Work smarter, not harder. This is all about efficiency optimization." What actually happened instead was that within 8 short weeks, my standard 50-hour workweek ballooned into a 65-hour workweek. The new daily metrics dashboard required 2 solid hours every single morning just to manually compile and validate. Client emergencies still needed immediate, demanding attention. Monthly reporting deadlines did not magically disappear. Quarterly planning cycles still demanded the exact same level of granular detail and intense analysis. Our cohesive team of 8 experienced senior coordinators quickly shrank to 6 when 2 people left for positions at competitor companies that actually understood work-life balance. Jessica's response to the resignations was infuriating. "This is a great opportunity for everyone to extend their skill sets and take on more strategic responsibility." No replacement hires were approved, no adjustment to our massive deliverables was made. Just more grueling work, distributed among fewer exhausted people, with the absurd expectation that we would seamlessly maintain the exact same high quality and rapid turnaround times that had made our department the absolute backbone of the company's operational success. By month 4, under Jessica's disastrous leadership, I was averaging 75 hours a week. By month 8, it was a staggering 85 hours. This current quarter, the one that generated our record, breaking $267 million in revenue. I tracked 91 hours per week for 12 straight weeks. You might logically wonder why I did not push back harder, why I did not just say no to the completely impossible workload. There were three heavy reasons, and all of them were sitting right in my checkbook every single month. Alimony payments of $2,800 to my ex-wife Julia, who had gotten half of everything in our bitter divorce settlement. My daughter Chloe's incredibly expensive pre-med program at Northwestern University, and my son Daniel's mechanical engineering degree at Colorado State. At 48 years old with an ex-wife, two kids whose higher education costs more per year than I used to make in total, and an aging father showing the tragic early signs of dementia, walking away from a $185,000 salary was not exactly a simple decision I could make lightly. But the absolute real reason I stayed was not just financial. It was deep professional pride. The complex systems I had built over 15 years were handling the company's massive, unpredicted growth flawlessly. The operational frameworks I painstakingly designed were processing more daily transactions than anyone had thought technically possible when we first implemented them. My team was performing absolute miracles under impossible conditions, and I was not about to let 15 years of my life's work collapse into ruins just because some new young director thought she could optimize human beings like lines of software code. I naively thought if we just got through this brutal quarter, if we hit the astronomical numbers, everyone was demanding leadership would finally recognize what it actually cost us to achieve those results. I thought record-shattering revenue would automatically translate to proper staffing budgets, reasonable workloads, and maybe even some meaningful, tangible recognition of what we had miraculously accomplished. The quarter finally closed on a Thursday. $267 million in booked revenue, which was 34% above target, making it the highest performing quarter in company history by a massive margin. My operational systems handled the unprecedented volume without a single major failure. Zero critical downtime. Customer satisfaction scores actually improved despite the massive increased transaction load. Friday morning, the corporate celebration was exactly what you would cynically expect from a company that just posted record profits while squeezing its employees dry. We had cheap cupcakes in the break room, blue frosting with the company logo printed in edible ink. Jessica gave a brief, hollow speech about team performance and operational excellence, using the exact same corporate vocabulary that meant everything and nothing at all. There was generic polite applause, quick photos for the internal company newsletter, and then it was immediately back to the grueling work. No bonus announcements were made. No discussions about headcount increases were initiated. No acknowledgement was given that we had just proven my systems could scale way beyond what anyone had projected. Just cheap sugar and stock phrases about appreciating everyone's hard work. The weekend came and went in a blur of exhaustion. I spent Saturday entirely catching up on personal emails I had been ignoring for weeks, and Sunday desperately trying to have dinner with my kids without checking my phone every 10 minutes. Chloe mentioned she had been trying to call me for 3 days about something important related to her MCAT prep courses. Daniel bluntly asked if I was okay because I had missed our monthly lunch 2 months in a row, and I looked like I had aged 5 years in 6 months. Monday afternoon, Jessica called me into her pristine office. I walked in tired but genuinely hopeful, expecting maybe a real substantive conversation about resources, about sustainable growth, about building on what we had just achieved. Instead, I saw a stack of glossy, cheap vouchers on her desk. They had corporate branding restaurant partner logos, the kind of promotional materials you would get in a new employee welcome packet or at a college job fair. "Edward," she said, beaming like she was about to deliver life-changing news. "I wanted to personally thank you for your incredible dedication this quarter. Your leadership made all the difference in our historic success." She picked up a purple marker, uncapped it with a small pop, and carefully wrote on one of the glossy vouchers. I watched her form each letter in neat, cheerful handwriting. "Appreciate the little things. JF." Then she actually drew a small smiley face next to her initials, the kind of doodle you would see on a greeting card from a child. She slid it across her mahogany desk toward me. It landed next to my coffee cup, which I noticed was empty and had a dark ring stain on the bottom, because I had been reusing it for 3 days straight without washing it. $7 toward any purchase at Urban Bistro Network, a chain of corporate lunch spots, with overpriced stale sandwiches and coffee that tasted like it had been brewing since the previous administration. I picked up the plastic voucher and examined it closely. Not 10, not 15, not even enough to cover a full basic lunch at the cafes where it was actually valid. Maybe a dry sandwich without a drink or a bitter coffee and a stale muffin if you did not mind spending your own hard-earned money to supplement your corporate appreciation. These are just small tokens. Jessica continued, completely misreading my silence, gesturing to the stack of identical vouchers. We are giving them to the people who really stepped up this quarter. I wanted to add a personal touch to show that we actively notice individual contributions. I slowly looked up at her. She was genuinely smiling. She was not mocking me. She was not being passive-aggressive. She was just completely and utterly oblivious to reality. In her mind, this was thoughtful leadership, a meaningful gesture that showed she deeply understood the human side of management. For 91 hours a week, for 15 years of operational expertise, for systems that had just processed $267 million in quarterly revenue without breaking for staying late, coming in early, working weekends, missing family dinners, postponing doctor appointments, and sacrificing every single aspect of my personal life to keep her department running flawlessly. My reward was $7 and a purple marker's smiley face. "You know what, Jessica," I said, letting a slow, cold smile spread across my face. "You are absolutely right. I really should start appreciating the little things." She exhaled loudly, her shoulders dropping slightly as relief washed over her expression. "I knew you would understand, Edward. You have such a great perspective on what really matters. That is why you are such an incredibly valuable leader here." "I do," I said, still holding that cold smile. "I really do understand everything now." I turned around and walked back to my desk. I sat down heavily and placed the $7 voucher right next to my keyboard. The office around me was humming with its usual frantic afternoon energy. People typing aggressively, phones ringing incessantly. The gentle whoosh of the struggling HVAC system, trying to keep 200 stressed bodies comfortable in a space designed for 150. For the first time in months, I actually heard the sounds around me instead of just existing in a numb bubble of deadline stress. I opened my laptop and pulled up the Q3 operational report I had meticulously compiled for next week's crucial board presentation. It was 15 pages of detailed charts, graphs, and metrics that told the undeniable story of our record quarter. $267 million in processed revenue, 0 critical system failures, a 15% efficiency improvement over the previous quarter, customer satisfaction ratings that had actually increased despite the massive volume spike. Then I reached over and turned on my desktop scanner. The machine hummed to life, a sound I had heard thousands of times over the years, but never quite like this. I fed the cheap voucher through face up, watching the scanning light bar sweep across Jessica's purple marker handwriting and that incredibly cheerful little smiley face. The machine beeped softly and produced a perfect high-resolution digital image. I opened a new slide in PowerPoint, something I could do in my sleep after 15 years of creating executive presentations. On the left side of the slide, I placed our Q3 revenue summary. Clean professional fonts, flawless, formatting the exact kind of chart that made greedy board members nod approvingly. $267 million in bold blue text. On the right side, I dropped in the scanned image of the voucher. The purple marker was clearly visible against the white plastic background. The smiley face looked even more ridiculous and insulting when enlarged to match the scale of the massive revenue numbers. I added absolutely no commentary, no angry annotations or sarcastic footnotes. Just two undeniable facts side by side, letting anyone with functioning eyes draw their own conclusions about the company's twisted priorities. I saved the file of Q3 results and recognitions EHPPTX and sat back in my chair. Around me, the office continued its normal grinding rhythm. Keyboards clicking urgent phone conversations about implementations, schedules the distant hum of the break room coffee machine. My trusted colleague Amanda was diligently troubleshooting a complex client integration issue. Two desks over patiently explaining why their timeline expectations were not realistic given their technical constraints. It was normal operational work, the exact kind I had been doing for 15 years, the kind that kept this massive company running smoothly while executives took all the credit for strategic vision and market leadership. I opened a new email draft and began typing with absolute clarity. Subject Q3 operational results, legal notice and personal transition. Dear Executive Leadership Team, the attached comparison slides summarizes both our historic Q3 financial achievements and my personal experience delivering it. Over the past 15 years, I have built and maintained the critical operational infrastructure that enabled today's record performance. This quarter, that infrastructure successfully processed $267 million in revenue. Through systems I personally designed, coordinated by teams I developed following protocols I established. To achieve these unprecedented results, I averaged 91 hours per week for 12 consecutive weeks. My team of 6 coordinators worked similar grueling schedules, managing client implementations across multiple global time zones while miraculously maintaining our department's zero-failure track record. The attached image shows our official Q3 revenue achievement alongside the tangible appreciation I received from management for this performance. At 48 years old, supporting 2 college students and managing family medical expenses, I deeply understand the profound value of dedicated work. I also understand the value of appropriate professional recognition and legal boundaries. Please consider this email as formal notice that the operational department's current staffing model and relentless workload expectations pose a severe operational risk that borders on breach of fiduciary duty to our shareholders. The deliberate understaffing has created critical single points of failure. Furthermore, the core workflow templates and automation macros currently running our daily logistics were developed by me prior to my employment here. Effective immediately, I am formally revoking the implied license for Summit Enterprises to utilize these proprietary macros, citing protections under 17 U.S.C. Section 106. Continued unauthorized use will constitute willful copyright infringement. The operational systems I built on company time will of course continue serving this company. However, the immense institutional knowledge I carry and my proprietary tools will transition with me when I resign effective 2 weeks from today. I have learned to appreciate many things during my long tenure here. The satisfaction of building systems that actually work, the profound pride of developing teams that perform flawlessly under extreme pressure, and the critical importance of working for leadership that values human contribution as more than an exploitable line item in a budget. Thank you for the opportunity to contribute to Summit's massive growth over the past decade and a half. Sincerely, Edward Harper, Senior Operations Director. I attached the PowerPoint slide and reviewed the recipient list twice to make sure I had everyone. CEO Stephen Vance, who joined the company 3 years ago and still frequently called me Edgar. COO Patricia Rollins, who understood operations better than most executives, but was still firmly convinced that efficiency meant mercilessly doing more with less. CFO Michael Henderson, who had actually worked his way up from accounting and might genuinely appreciate the stark visual financial comparison. VP of Human Resources Sandra Lopez, who would soon have a monumental legal and personnel disaster to deal with. And finally, Jessica Foster, copied for immediate visibility into exactly how her brilliant leadership style was perceived by the people doing the actual grueling work. At 3:47 p.m. on a Tuesday afternoon that felt like the definitive end of an era and the beginning of my actual life, I took a deep breath and clicked send. The response was vastly faster than even I expected. By 3:51, my desk phone was buzzing aggressively with urgent calls from executive extensions I did not usually recognize. By 3:54, Amanda looked over from her troubleshooting session with raised, concerned eyebrows. Edward, your phone has been ringing non-stop. Is everything okay over there? Everything is perfectly fine, I said, and for the first time in many agonizing months I completely meant it. At 3:56, our CFO forwarded my email to someone with the subject line, "Urgent need to discuss massive operational liability immediately." At 3:58, Jessica's direct line appeared flashing on my caller ID. I calmly let it go to voicemail. I was already moving, systematically gathering the few personal items I had accumulated over 15 years of making this stressful office my second home. Family photos from back when I still had the time and energy to take family photos. The spare reading glasses I kept in my top desk drawer after too many late nights staring at endless spreadsheets. The insulated coffee mug my kids had given me for Father's Day. 3 years ago, back when they still innocently believed their dad's job was something to be immensely proud of, instead of something that kept him from ever being present in their lives. Everything else on the desk and in the cabinets technically belonged to the company. The complex technical manuals, the extensive process documentation, the vital emergency contact lists, the invaluable informal notes about client preferences and system quirks that made the difference between smooth operations and constant chaotic firefighting. 15 years of deep institutional knowledge that absolutely could not be replaced by hiring someone with an MBA and a fresh perspective. People were starting to stare openly as I emptied my desk drawers into a small cardboard box. Word was spreading rapidly the way it always does in open-plan offices, through shocked glances, whispered urgent conversations, and the kind of electric energy that builds when something incredibly significant is happening. A guy from procurement walked by and gave me a subtle, respectful thumbs up. Sophia from client services mouthed the words "good for you" when she thought nobody from management was looking. I did not make any grand speeches or send any sentimental departmental farewell emails. The single PowerPoint slide in the legal notice said absolutely everything that needed saying. I just meticulously packed my few things, securely logged out of my computer, and confidently walked toward the elevator carrying a cardboard box that represented the personal remnants of 15 years. The elevator doors opened with their familiar pleasant ding. I stepped inside, turned around, and looked back one last time at the operational department I had built from the ground up. My dedicated team was still working, still expertly solving complex problems, still keeping the massive company running smoothly despite everything stacked against them. They were incredibly good people doing vitally important work under impossible, abusive conditions. The heavy metal doors slid closed, and for the first time since Jessica had handed me that insulting voucher 2 hours earlier, I felt something that might have actually been true peace. The expansive lobby felt fundamentally different on my way out. It had the same highly polished marble floors, the same slick corporate promotional videos playing on a loop on mounted flat screens, the same professional receptionist nodding politely at departing employees. But I was not mentally reviewing tomorrow's endless task list or anxiously calculating how many weekend hours I would need to catch up on delayed critical projects. I was completely done calculating. I pushed firmly through the heavy glass doors into the late afternoon sunlight. It was October, and the crisp air reminded you that winter was coming, whether you were ready or not. The massive parking lot stretched out in neat, endless rows, filled with sedans and SUVs, belonging to people who were still trapped inside, still working, still foolishly believing their immense dedication would eventually be recognized with something far more substantial than cheap vouchers and stale cupcakes. I was exactly halfway to my truck when I heard it. "Edward!" Jessica's voice sharp with absolute panic, cutting through the ambient noise of nearby traffic and distant construction. Her heels were clicking frantically fast on the rough asphalt. I stopped right beside. My truck turned around slowly and waited. She was half running between the parked cars, her usually flawless appearance completely disheveled. Her designer blazer was askew, several strands of hair had escaped from her normally immaculate style, and she was visibly out of breath. "Wait," she called out, desperately reaching me with her hand raised like she could physically stop me from leaving the premises. "We need to talk about this right now." I leaned comfortably against my driver's side door, crossed my arms over my chest, and just waited in silence. She caught her breath, straightened her blazer nervously, and desperately tried to reassemble her shattered professional composure. About your email, she said, her voice shaking slightly. You completely embarrassed me in front of the entire executive team. Do you have any idea how that makes our department look to the CEO? It depends heavily on who is reading it, I replied calmly. To me, it looks brutally honest. The voucher was purely symbolic, she said, speaking far too quickly. You know we have strict budget constraints. We cannot just hand out cash bonuses every quarter, Edward. I said, my voice steady and cold. I did not ask for a massive bonus. I asked for basic recognition that actually matched the immense value delivered. Then what exactly do you want? The immense frustration in her voice was edging rapidly towards sheer desperation. Because right now it feels like you are trying to completely destroy this company on your way out with those legal threats. What I want is executive leadership that fundamentally understands that operational excellence requires sustainable human practices. What I want is a director who recognizes that 91-hour work weeks are not a badge of honor, they are a catastrophic management failure. What I want is someone who actually knows the difference between true appreciation and gross exploitation. And frankly, I want to take my intellectual property and leave. She folded her arms defensively. You think I do not fight for this department behind closed doors? Do you have any idea what kind of immense pressure I am under from the C-suite? Revenue targets come directly from corporate. I do not set them. And your brilliant solution was a $7 voucher with a smiley face, I countered. It was a gesture, she said again, like repeating it could magically change reality. A personal touch to show individual recognition. It was a message, I replied, crystal clear. 15 years of operational expertise equals $7 and some purple marker enthusiasm. Her smartphone buzzed loudly in her hand. She glanced down reflexively, and I saw the immense stress instantly building in her face. The screen prominently showed a text preview from the QO. Emergency Leadership Meeting. Edward's resignation and IP threat. Conference room now. She looked back up at me, and for a moment the rigid professional mask dropped completely. I saw exactly what was underneath. A 31-year-old woman who had been promoted far beyond her actual experience level, desperately trying to manage complex systems she did not fully understand, while constantly satisfying executives who measured absolutely everything except what actually mattered. HR just called me, she said quietly, staring at the ground. They want to make a counteroffer. Senior VP of Operations. A 25% salary increase. Full equity participation. We can talk about licensing your macros. I am not negotiating, Jessica, I said. She blinked in shock. What do you mean? I am not negotiating with Summit. I am simply informing you that I am leaving. You cannot just walk away from 15 years, she said, completely incredulous. Think about your career trajectory, your hard-earned industry reputation. I have 15 years of proven undeniable results and an operational track record that speaks for itself. My reputation will easily survive this. The real question is whether yours will. Her phone buzzed again. Another urgent message this time, directly from the CEO's executive assistant. I could clearly see the harsh reality finally settling in. The one person who actually understood their entire operational infrastructure better than anyone else was walking away, and there was absolutely no quick replacement for that kind of deep institutional knowledge. At least come back inside and talk to the executive team, she pleaded. They want to meet with you immediately. There is plenty of room to work something out if you will just... No, I said, cutting her off. Edward, be reasonable. Jessica, I said quietly, but firmly, this is me being reasonable for the first time in 18 agonizing months. I unlocked my truck and opened the heavy door. She stood there frozen in the parking lot, her phone buzzing constantly with urgent, panicked messages, watching the man who was no longer her problem drive away into the afternoon sun. 6 months later, I am consistently sleeping 8 hours most nights. My blood pressure is completely normal for the first time in nearly a decade. I took a highly lucrative position as VP of Operations at a rapidly growing mid-size manufacturing firm where the CEO is 55 and deeply understands that real experience costs money, but inexperience costs infinitely more. Chloe successfully finished her MCAT prep courses with me actually being present to help her study and run through practice questions. Daniel and I have happily resumed our monthly lunches, and he is actually considering operations management as a career path. though I have strongly warned him to choose his bosses very carefully. My father's dementia is unfortunately progressing, but I actually have the time now to take him to his doctor appointments and handle the overwhelming paperwork that comes with managing someone else's fading life while they are still living it. The new company eagerly gave me equity, a massive signing bonus for the use of my proprietary macros' reasonable deadlines, and something Jessica Foster never once offered: genuine respect for the profound knowledge that only comes from doing incredibly difficult work well for a very long time. I heard through reliable industry contacts that Summit Enterprises ended up having to urgently hire 4 new senior coordinators just to handle the massive workload I used to manage completely alone. The core operational systems I built are still technically running, but without someone who intimately understands their complex design principles, small everyday problems are rapidly compounding into massive ones. They are painfully learning what Henry Wallace always tried to teach everyone: operations is exactly like a foundation. Nobody ever thinks about it until it cracks. If you are reading this right now and thinking about your own personal version of that insulting voucher, whether it is a pathetic pizza party after record profits, a branded cheap coffee mug for extraordinary effort, or a $7 coupon for sacrificing your physical health and precious family time, pay close attention. That tiny moment of corporate recognition is not gratitude, it is a profound revelation. You have built something incredibly valuable with your finite time, your hard-earned expertise, and your unwavering dedication. When someone hands you a cheap token and expects genuine gratitude, they are telling you exactly how little they understand what you are truly worth. At 48 years old, I finally learned that appreciating the little things actually means recognizing when it is absolutely time to find people who appreciate the big things. Your deep knowledge, your unwavering commitment, and your irreplaceable human contribution to something far larger than yourself. Life is simply too short to ever accept $7 vouchers when you have rightfully earned genuine respect and true compensation.